For years, there was this phantom haunting the roads of the United Kingdom, a predator who could snatch children in broad daylight and just vanish, almost like he was never there. This is the story of the massive, decades-long hunt for Robert Black, one of Britain's most prolific child murderers, and the incredible, groundbreaking police work that finally put an end to his reign of terror.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down today. We're going to start by tracing the origins of a killer. Then we'll get into the truly heartbreaking pattern of his murders. From there, we'll see how the police fought back with a revolutionary new system, leading right up to the dramatic moment he was caught in the act. And we'll wrap up by looking at the long road to justice and, frankly, the haunting questions that still linger today.
All right, first up, to really understand the monster, you have to look at the man. So let's go all the way back to Robert Black's early life, because a really disturbing pattern of behavior started to emerge long before he ever committed murder.
So this timeline, it shows a really clear and chilling escalation, doesn't it? It starts when he's just 16, with his first serious sexual assault. He does time in a youth institution, then moves to London, and that's where his obsessions just get deeper. But honestly, the most critical step comes in 1976. He lands a job as a long-distance driver, and that hands him the perfect tool to become a mobile predator.
And that job? It was the absolute perfect cover. Think about it. As a delivery driver, he was crisscrossing the entire UK, learning the road network like the back of his hand. This gave him the power to strike in one part of the country and dispose of a body hundreds of miles away. It completely baffled the different police forces who, back then, were operating very locally. They just had no way of knowing they were all hunting the exact same man.
So now, let's jump forward to the 1980s and see how this pattern just tragically spiraled. With the means and the motive now in place, Black began a series of abductions and murders that would spread fear across the entire nation for almost a decade. His first proven victim was 9-year-old Jennifer Carty over in Northern Ireland. She was just cycling to a friend's house when he snatched her. Her body was found 6 days later, and this set a really grim template for the crimes to come. A vulnerable child, taken from a public place, and then murdered far from home.
And not even a year later, he struck again. 11-year-old Susan Maxwell disappeared while she was walking home along this very road on the Anglo-Scottish border. Her body was found over 250 miles away in Staffordshire. That's a massive distance, and it made connecting these crimes incredibly difficult for the police at the time.
His final confirmed victim in this awful series was 10-year-old Sarah Harper. She disappeared just yards from her home in 1986. Now, her murder, along with the murders of Susan Maxwell and 5-year-old Caroline Hogg, the sheer geographical spread of these crimes finally led investigators to link them. They started calling them the Midlands Triangle murders.
You know, the scale of these crimes was just overwhelming. It spanned multiple countries and police jurisdictions. Traditional policing methods just weren't cutting it. The hunt for this phantom killer demanded a completely revolutionary approach to detective work.
The solution was a system called Holmes, and it was an absolute game changer. For the very first time, separate police forces all across the UK could pool their information, witness statements, vehicle sightings, suspect details, you name it, into one massive searchable database. It let detectives instantly connect these tiny, separate pieces of information from hundreds of miles apart. This system was literally born from the challenge of hunting killers just like Robert Black.
Just to give you a sense of the problem they were facing, the investigation into Susan Maxwell's murder alone generated 500,000 paper index cards, 500,000. It was a logistical nightmare. I mean, can you imagine trying to find a connection between card number 100 and card number 400,000 by hand? It's practically impossible. Holmes made that possible.
So in 1988, investigators turned to the FBI for help. And the psychological profile they came back with was just eerily accurate. They described a loner, probably in his late 30s or 40s, someone who appeared totally relaxed and comfortable while he was out looking for victims. They were painting a perfect picture of Robert Black. They just didn't have his name.
So despite this massive police effort and all this new technology, Black's reign of terror wasn't ended by a database. No, it came down to a single, brazen act, a sharp-eyed witness, and just a dose of pure chance.
This is the moment it all came crashing down. In this tiny Scottish village called Stow, Black snatched a 6-year-old girl in broad daylight. But he made one fatal mistake. Someone was watching. A retired postmaster named David Herkes saw the whole thing happen. He didn't hesitate for a second, jotted down the license plate, called the police. And just minutes later, officers pulled Black's van over. And inside, they found the terrified little girl bound and gagged in a sleeping bag. The phantom was finally caught.
This quiet, unassuming village street became the final scene in one of Britain's biggest and longest manhunts, right here. This was the place where a decade of meticulous, monstrous planning was completely undone in a matter of moments by one man's quick thinking.
In his search of Black's van, well, it revealed his horrifying toolkit. Police found everything you would need to abduct, restrain, and assault a child. It was essentially a mobile torture chamber, and it left absolutely no doubt about his intentions, not just for the girl he'd just kidnapped, but for all the victims who came before her.
So, with Robert Black finally behind bars, the enormous task of linking him to his past crimes and securing justice for the victims and their families could begin. But his capture also opened up a whole host of new, terrifying questions.
The legal process was incredibly long and painstaking. First, he was jailed for life for the Stowe abduction. Then, in 1994, thanks to advances in forensic science and the meticulous work of piecing together old petrol receipts, they put him at the scenes of those Midlands Triangle murders. And believe it or not, it wasn't until 2011, 20 years after his capture, that he was finally convicted of murdering Jennifer Carty. He was never going to be a free man again.
He maintained his silence right to the very end. Black never confessed to the murders he was convicted of, and he certainly never spoke about the other children police believed he had killed. He died in 2016, taking every single one of his secrets with him to the grave.
And this leaves us with the most haunting question of all. Investigators are absolutely certain that the 4 murders he was convicted of are just the tip of the iceberg. Police have officially linked him to at least 14 other unsolved child murders and disappearances across the UK and even into mainland Europe.
This map just reveals the true terrifying scope of his evil. Each one of those dots represents a family's tragedy, a life cut short, a case that may now never be solved. Robert Black wasn't just a serial killer, he was a phantom who moved through the shadows of an entire continent, leaving a legacy of pain and unanswered questions that haunt us to this day.